Now let's look at the classes that are required for the respiratory therapy degree. So as you can see in this table, the general education courses of English 101 and 102, speech, biology 111, you have to have a math or a science elective, you have to have a humanities and arts elective. We like to recommend Philosophy 225, which is an ethics course. Social Behavioral Science elective, which we recommend Psych 101. You must also have a mathematics elective. So up above it says math or science. So you could take an extra science, but you still have to take a college level math. We recommend either Math 111 or Math 100, which is math for business. That course will allow you, if you become a supervisor or a manager in the future, you will have a basis of understanding for those types of business things that you're going to be looking at. You must take a PE class. Of course, you must have Respiratory 100, which is what you're doing now. And you have to have a first year seminar class. Note that Math 090 is the prereq for Respiratory 100. So you take 28 credits worth of general education requirements. Then once you get into the clinical phase of the program, these are the courses that you will take in the major. And there are 43 credits here. So you can see how they are all listed. Note that any course that ends in a 5 is a clinical course. Okay, so 175, 205, 235, 245. Those are all clinical courses. The rest of them are lecture courses. So this gives you a total of 71 credits that are required for the associate degree in respiratory therapy. Now, the courses that you have to have completed before you can be admitted to the clinical portion of the program are Bio 111, English 101, and of course, Respiratory 100. Respiratory 100 is good for 2 years. Now, if you have other courses done, that's great. But these courses must be completed by the end of the fall semester. We do accept the fall grades. So if you are currently taking Bio 111 or Bio 121, that also works. English 101 and Respiratory 100, all of that goes into the calculation of your points in the admission point system, which we will cover a little bit later. This is the recommended course sequence for students. So if you come into the college, and your very first semester is this semester, you are college ready, you're not taking any developmental courses. This is the sequence that we recommend that you follow in order to graduate and get all of the courses done in the program. Now you will see that if you have some of these done, that does cut down the number of credits per semester, which could affect your financial aid. So you may not have full-time financial aid, you may only be eligible for part-time financial aid. If you have questions about this, please see me because we can discuss it. So with all of these courses, let's talk about the time commitment that is needed to be successful in the program. The Department of Education states that we should give you 2 hours of work outside of class for every hour that you are in class. So this is a 2-credit course, And if we were running it for 15 weeks, which is a semester, that means I should give you 4 hours of outside work in addition to the 2 hours that you have allotted for the class. So that would be 6 hours a week. However, because we're doing it in half the time, that bumps up to 12 hours a week. Now, for some of you, it may take you 12 hours a week to study. For some of you, it may not take you 12 hours a week to study. I don't give you work just to have busy work outside of class to meet this requirement. Some weeks are going to be a little bit heavier than others, but just understand that this is the guideline that we must follow. And that does not include clinical, lab testing, or personal practice time. That is only lecture classes. So let's take a look at your second spring semester. And if you were only taking respiratory courses, you will have 8 credits of respiratory. So let's look at the class time plus your study time, and how much time does that eat up in your week? Well, we'll start with clinical. So we say 8 hours a day, that includes your driving time. Okay, for some of you it won't be as much, but we'll say 8 hours a day, but 6 of that is in the hospital. So that's about 16 hours a week. Respiratory 210 is your critical care class. That is 5 hours a week of lecture and 10 hours a week of study time. And then lab, 3 hours in lab, and we recommend that you're putting in around 6 hours a week of study time for that. And when you add all of that up, you end up with 40 hours a week, which is a full-time job. You need to think of your schooling like you would a job. So our recommendation is work. You should not work more than 20 to 24 hours a week if possible. If that's not possible, maybe you're the only person who is bringing income into the family, or you're single, or whatever. There's various reasons that people have to work 40 hours a week. And I absolutely understand that. But work is not an acceptable excuse for missing schoolwork. So if it's not possible and you're working 40 hours a week, remember you're trying to juggle home, work, and school. That's an awful lot. So basically you end up with no social life. And you need to ask yourself, if you're not doing well, am I really putting in the amount of time he said that I needed to put into school? I can tell you when I was a student in respiratory school, I worked weekends, 2 16-hour shifts every weekend, and then through the week, I only did school. I was here, I was in the lab, I was studying with my study group, doing all of those things. I had no social life. Social life was when we had break. And I had to make sure that my family and my friends understood this. So it is definitely can be a challenge if you need to work more than that. In the next video, we're going to talk about essential requirements. And then we're going to get on to how do you apply for the clinical portion of the program.